Hidden deep within Egypt's timeless deserts, beyond the glittering treasures and towering monuments, lies a world of enigmas that have resisted explanation for centuries. Every tomb, temple, and weathered inscription holds clues to a civilization both brilliant and deeply mysterious. Yet many of these secrets remain locked away, defying the efforts of archaeologists and historians. Some speak of curses and strange deaths, others of objects that should not exist, or writings that hint at terrifying beliefs long forgotten. As we step into the forgotten corridors of the past, we will move through the shadows of ancient chambers and stand before relics that seem to whisper warnings from another time, uncovering the unsettling stories that history has yet to solve. These are the mysteries Egypt has kept hidden and perhaps never meant for us to understand. The screaming mummies of Deir el-Bahari. In the cliffs of Deir el-Bahari, near the Valley of the Kings, a hidden tomb was discovered in 1881 that would later be known as DB 320. Inside, archaeologists uncovered dozens of royal mummy skins, queens, and nobles gathered together in what seemed like a secret emergency burial. Many of them had once been buried in grand tombs elsewhere, but had been moved, likely to protect them from grave robbers during times of political collapse. Among the many famous names was something far more disturbing: a mummy twisted in agony, its mouth frozen in a scream that seemed to echo across centuries. The body would come to be known simply as the screaming mummy. Unlike the carefully wrapped and decorated remains of the other royals, this one was crude. There was no gold, no ornate coffins, just a body bound in untreated linen, blackened by time, face contorted in something that looked like sheer horror. When experts unwrapped it, they didn't find the usual signs of honor or care. They found a corpse that had been left to rot, an open mouth, clenched hands, and a twisted torso that made it look like he had died in agony. And the mystery only deepened from there. Early theories suggested poison or torture. The body's conditions seemed to suggest that it hadn't even been embalmed properly. The usual process in ancient Egypt, removing the internal organs, treating the body with natron, wrapping it in resin-coated bandages, was either skipped or done incompletely. In this case, the body appeared to have decomposed before being wrapped. The stomach was bloated, the skin cracked and darkened, and no attempt had been made to give the man a restful pose. This wasn't someone who had been prepared for eternity. This was someone cast aside. Eventually, the mummy was identified as Pentuer, a prince from the 20th dynasty, and the son of Pharaoh Ramesses III, and that's when the story took an even darker turn. In ancient papyrus records, particularly the judicial papyrus of Turinway, find evidence of a conspiracy against Ramesses III. Around 1155 BCE, a group led by one of his wives, Tiye, and her son Pentuer tried to assassinate the king and install Pentuer as ruler. The conspiracy was exposed, and the aftermath was brutal. The court documents describe a series of executions and forced suicides. Though the records never use names directly, they refer to one royal son who was forced to take his own life as punishment. Some believe Pentuer was that prince. If he had committed suicide, possibly by poison, it would explain the contorted face and the strange condition of the body. And if he was involved in a treasonous plot, the desecration of his burial might have been intentional. In Egyptian tradition, denying someone a proper burial meant denying them a place in the afterlife. It was one of the worst punishments imaginable. So Pentuer wasn't just executed, he was erased. But the evidence is still debated. Some researchers argue that the scream could have been the natural result of decomposition. After death, a body can contract, and the jaw may fall open. The blackened skin might come from chemical reactions with the wrappings. Others, however, say the level of decay and the clear lack of ritual handling point to something more deliberate. The fact that he was buried alongside kings, yet treated like a criminal, creates a contradiction that's never been resolved. Even stranger, some forensic studies suggest he may have been wrapped hastily after death, as if someone had tried to give him some kind of last-minute dignity. His bindings were tight, almost forcefully so, and his hands were clenched in fists beneath the linen. One theory suggests that sympathetic priests may have tried to preserve the body without fully going against the punishment he had received. A burial in disgrace, hidden among honored ancestors. To this day, the screaming mummy sits in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. His twisted face, permanently caught in a soundless cry, continues to disturb everyone who sees it. He wasn't just a royal figure or a political conspirator. He was someone caught between punishment and ritual, between memory and erasure, and no one can say for certain whether his scream was the result of pain, guilt, fear, or something even more ancient that we still don't understand. The tomb with no name. Deep in the Valley of the Kings, just beyond the more famous tombs of pharaohs like Tutankhamun and Seti I, lies a burial that has left archaeologists puzzled for decades. When it was first uncovered in 1907 by British archaeologist Edward Ayrton, the structure appeared typical at first glance: rock-cut chambers, a sloping entrance, and traces of past disturbance. But as researchers moved deeper into the tomb, they realized they had found something different, something missing. There was no name. Unlike nearly every royal tomb of the New Kingdom, this one had no identifying marks, no cartouche carved into the walls, no inscriptions, no painted scenes show the journey to the afterlife. The sarcophagus was there, broken, chipped but bare. No names, no titles. Someone had been buried here in complete silence, and whoever they were, their identity had been carefully wiped away. Inside, the tomb was a strange mixture of clues and contradictions. Dozens of jars once used for embalming fluids were scattered around, many still sealed. There were traces of linens, fragments of wooden furniture, and pieces of gold leaf, suggesting a burial of someone important, possibly even royal. And yet the walls remained blank, as if they had never been meant to tell a story. That silence felt intentional. Over time, the tomb was labeled KV55, and while the identity of its occupant remained unknown, what archaeologists did find only made things more complicated. The remains inside belonged to a single male individual. His bones were fragile and decayed, but enough was preserved for early examinations to suggest he had died young, possibly in his 20s or early 30s. That information narrowed the list of possibilities, but it didn't close the case. What sparked even more confusion was what had been buried with him. Among the debris were items clearly linked to the so-called Amarna period of the most controversial chapters in Egyptian history. That was the time of Pharaoh Akhenaten, who had tried to reshape the entire religion of Egypt, abandoning the traditional gods in favor of a single deity, the Aten. His reign caused chaos and deep division. When he died, there was an aggressive effort to remove his legacy and erase every trace of his reforms. Some of the objects in KV55 were inscribed with the names of Akhenaten's family members. Others pointed to Queen Ti, Akhenaten's mother. And then there was the sarcophagus itself, which appeared to have been reused and altered. The face had been chiseled away. The name had been hacked off. It was as if someone had wanted to bury this person, but not honor him, almost like a secret laid to rest, but not forgiven. Decades later, new tests were performed on the remains using modern technology. DNA analysis suggested the body belonged to the father of Tutankhamun. That would make the unidentified man Akhenaten himself. But the results didn't settle the debate. Other physical evidence, including the estimated age at death and skeletal features, didn't fully match what we know of Akhenaten from statues and historical records. Some scholars argue the body could belong to Smenkhare, a mysterious figure who may have ruled briefly after Akhenaten, possibly under another name, but even that is uncertain. To this day, no one agrees on who Smenkhare really was or whether he was even a separate person at all. Another strange detail adds to the unease around KV-55. The condition of the tomb suggests it was deliberately sabotaged. Water had seeped in and damaged much of the burial, even though most royal tombs were carefully sealed against such things. The coffin was broken. The canopic jars used to hold vital organs had been defaced. It seemed like someone had gone to great lengths not only to bury this person without honor, but to ensure they were forgotten entirely. More than a century after its discovery, KV-55 remains one of the most unsettling puzzles in Egyptian archaeology. The tomb exists, the body is real, the artifacts are there, but the name, the identity, the reason for the secrecy, they're all still missing. Whoever was buried there had once held power. They had once walked among gods and kings, but in death they were given no face, no voice, no legacy, just a hole in the earth, and a silence no one has yet been able to break. The Black Sarcophagus of Alexandria. Construction workers in Alexandria were preparing the foundation for a new building in July 2018 when they struck something solid beneath the earth. As the dust cleared and the excavators pulled back layers of stone, archaeologists were called to the site. What they uncovered would spark fear, fascination, and speculation across the world. It was a sealed black sarcophagus, enormous, untouched, and completely unlike anything found in the city before. At over 8 feet long and made from dark granite, the coffin was imposing. There were no elaborate carvings, no inscriptions, no symbols to identify who rested inside. Its surface was smooth and heavy, and it seemed to radiate silence. Even stranger, the sarcophagus had remained completely sealed for over 2,000 years. A thick layer of mortar between the lid and base had never been disturbed, meaning whatever lay inside had not been seen by human eyes since it was first buried sometime during Egypt's Greco-Roman period. Soon after news of the discovery broke, wild theories flooded the internet. Some believed it might contain the body of Alexander the Great, whose actual burial place has never been found. Others warned that opening the coffin could unleash a deadly curse. The rumors were easy to dismiss, but the unease lingered. Even seasoned archaeologists admitted they had never seen anything quite like it. Something was unsettling about the sheer size, the secrecy, and the way it had been buried under layers of heavy stone with no markers, as if someone had wanted it to disappear forever. When the lid was finally lifted, the smell alone caused people to step back. Inside, the sarcophagus was filled with reddish-brown liquid, later identified as a mix of sewage water and the decaying remains of 3 people. The bodies were not carefully arranged, and the bones appeared damaged. Skulls showed signs of fractures. There was no gold, no amulets, nothing that resembled a royal burial. Just waterlogged skeletons floating in dark, murky fluid. For many, that should have been the end of the mystery. But questions kept rising. Who were these 3 individuals? And why had they been buried together in such a massive coffin? The sarcophagus clearly wasn't made for theme. It was too large, and the craftsmanship suggested someone of high status had once been intended for it. But no one knew who. Some researchers proposed that the bodies were soldiers, possibly killed in battle and buried hastily. Others believed they were victims of a crime, dumped together in a coffin meant for someone else. The location of the tomb only made things more confusing. Alexandria was once a center of learning, royalty, and political power. It was where ancient Egyptian tradition met Greek and Roman influence. Yet the sarcophagus didn't reflect any of those cultures in full. Its design was Egyptian, but its burial style lacked the rituals. Its contents offered no clues. Even DNA tests failed to reveal a clear connection between the individuals, suggesting they weren't closely related. Everything about the burial seemed out of place. There was also something eerie about how the tomb had been hidden. While many sarcophagi were buried in temples or under elaborate tombs, this one was buried deep beneath an ordinary city block. No grand markers, no protective chambers, just sealed, buried, and forgotten, as if someone had wanted it locked away from memory. What made the case even stranger was how empty it felt. A sarcophagus of that size and weight would have taken a massive effort to transport and bury. It would have required skilled labor, tools, and planning. But all of that work went into a burial that lacked any of the meaning or symbols that defined Egyptian death culture. No names, no gods, no prayers, just silence and rot. Years later, the true purpose of the black sarcophagus remains unknown. We still don't know who it was made for, who ended up inside it, or why the burial was so unceremonious, despite the size and quality of the coffin itself. There are no records, no parallel cases, and no signs that it was ever visited after it was sealed. For now, it sits in storage, its contents studied but not fully understood. And even though the so-called curse never appeared, something about that coffin still feels unfinished, like a warning carved into stone, but written in a language no one remembers how to read. The lost labyrinth of Hawara. Long before the pyramids became the most famous landmarks of Egypt, there were stories of a structure even more impressive. Ancient travelers described it in writing, claiming it was larger than anything they had ever seen. The Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt around 450 BCE, said it had more rooms than he could count, arranged in a way that made it nearly impossible to navigate without a guide. According to him, this place wasn't just grand, it was overwhelming. They called it the labyrinth, and they said it was real. What's strange is that more than one ancient source spoke of it. The geographer Strabo mentioned it. So did Diodorus Siculus. These weren't just passing references, they gave detailed descriptions. Herodotus claimed it had 12 courts, all roofed and surrounded by walls, with doors facing one another. Inside were thousands of rooms spread over 2 level shafts underground, half above. He said he wasn't even allowed into the lower chambers, where the tombs of kings and sacred crocodiles were kept. Even the upper level, he said, was enough to leave him speechless. Today, the site believed to be the location of this structure lies near the village of Hawara, just south of the Fayum oasis. In the 19th century, explorers and archaeologists began digging there, hoping to find the remains of the labyrinth. What they found was curious. The ruins matched the general location and alignment described in the ancient texts. But instead of a grand maze, they found a mess of stone fragments, crushed passageways, and broken columns. Whatever had once stood there was gone, or at least buried deeper than anyone expected. Sir William Flinders Petrie, one of the most respected Egyptologists of the time, investigated the area in 1888. He concluded that the labyrinth had indeed existed, but had been destroyed long ago. According to his notes, the ancient building materials had likely been repurposed by later civilizations, possibly even during the Roman period. Stones were taken, columns reused, and what remained had collapsed into rubble. Still, some massive stone blocks remained buried underground. Petrie believed they were part of the original foundation. The structure is believed to have originally measured around 300 meters long and 244 meters wide, making it one of the largest buildings in the ancient world. Decades later, interest in the site faded. The focus shifted back to the pyramids, the tombs, and the temples along the Nile. But the mystery of Hawara never completely disappeared. In 2008, a group using ground-penetrating radar scanned the site again and detected what seemed to be an enormous subsurface structure. According to their data, something large still sits beneath the sand, possibly as big as the ancient descriptions claimed. But the site is restricted, and no full excavation has been approved. For now, it remains hidden. What adds to the mystery is that the labyrinth wasn't just a building. Herodotus claimed it was the administrative heart of ancient Egypt during the 12th dynasty under Pharaoh Amenemhat III. If that's true, It would mean the structure was once filled with records, religious texts, royal secrets and archive carved into stone. The underground levels, sealed from public view, may have held not just tombs, but knowledge the ancient Egyptians never intended to share. And that possibility is what keeps interested in the site alive. Some theories go even further. They suggest the labyrinth may have been a place of ritual, not just record keeping. The double levels, the hidden tombs, and the strange warnings in ancient texts all point to something more than architecture. The crocodiles, which were mummified and buried nearby, were sacred in this region, linked to the god Sobek. It's possible the entire complex was tied to death and rebirth, guarded not only by priests, but by something deeper and darker. Not a single excavation has ever uncovered all that lies below Hawara. The surface tells us only fragments of the story-cracked pillars, broken statues, outlines barely visible in the dust. The rest, if it still exists, waits below. Egypt's government has yet to greenlight a full-scale excavation, and until that happens, the labyrinth remains exactly what it has been for over 2,000 years. Saruma, wrapped in stone, a maze without an entrance, and a mystery no one has solved. The pyramid that shouldn't exist. On the edge of the desert at a site called Maidum, a strange pyramid stands half-finished and half-ruined, rising like a broken tower from the sand. It doesn't look like the smooth, iconic structures of Giza or the stepped forms of older designs. Instead, it seems frozen between two styles, as if its builders changed their minds halfway through or never finished what they started. Locals once called it the false pyramid because of its strange appearance, but the deeper mystery lies not in how it looks now, but in what it suggests about what ancient Egypt was capable of far earlier than we thought. The structure is believed to have been started during the reign of Pharaoh Huni at the end of the 3rd dynasty, and possibly completed by Sneferu, who ruled at the start of the 4th dynasty around 2600 BCE. That would make it one of the earliest large pyramids ever built. But here's the problem. The techniques used in its core, including smooth casing stones, straight passages, and a planned inner chamber, are far more advanced than what was supposedly known at that time. It's as if someone skipped centuries of trial and error and jumped straight to building with precision. Some scholars suggest the builders were experimenting, using Maidum as a testing ground for newer ideas in pyramid construction. But the precision of certain elements doesn't feel experimental. The passage leading into the burial chamber is smooth and exact, and the inner walls were once polished to a degree rarely seen in later pyramids. Even more confusing, the stones are cut with incredible accuracy and placed with tight joints methods that only appear much later in Egypt's architectural history. Adding to the mystery, the pyramid shows signs of partial collapse, but there's no consensus on when or why it occurred. Some say it fell during construction. Others believe it stood completed for a time before decaying. The outer casing appears to have slid off in a dramatic failure, possibly due to poor structural decisions. But if that were true, why were parts of the internal structure built so carefully? The mix of chaos and craftsmanship doesn't make sense. In modern studies, researchers found that the pyramid's core was originally built as a step structure, which was then modified into a true pyramid by adding layers of limestone casing. This change in Dezen half-step pyramid, half smooth, could explain the collapse, but it also adds more questions. Why would the builders change their approach midway through such a massive project? And how did they manage the new angles and weight loads without causing instability? Some of the math involved would require knowledge we don't associate with that period of Egyptian engineering. One of the most baffling discoveries is that the burial chamber inside the pyramid was never used. There's no evidence that anyone was ever laid to rest there. No remains, no sarcophagus, no funerary items. It's as if the pyramid was abandoned before its purpose was fulfilled. Or worse, it was completed and then deliberately emptied. That missing burial has led to theories that the entire project had a ceremonial or symbolic purpose. Perhaps it was never meant to house a body at all. The surrounding complex too seems unfinished. A mortuary temple sits next to the pyramid, but with minimal decoration. The causeway that would normally link the pyramid to the Nile Valley is incomplete. These signs of abandonment fuel the mystery further. Was there a disaster during construction, a shift in political power, or did something happen that made the entire site undesirable for burial? In recent years, satellite scans and structural analysis have revealed how massive the original design really was. If completed, the Maidum pyramid would have stood over 91 meters tall, making it one of the tallest structures of its time. The scale, precision, and ambition of its design still puzzle archaeologists, especially considering that it came so early in the history of pyramid building. There's no clear explanation for how techniques this advanced showed up so suddenly. All that remains now is a crumbling tower surrounded by fallen stones, with parts of its core exposed to the wind and sun. Visitors who stand near its base often comment on how unnatural it feels, like something built out of sequence, as if it were never meant to exist in its time. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe the Maidum pyramid is a glimpse into knowledge that came and vanished too quickly, a warning hidden in stone about how much we still don't understand. The bent pyramid's twisted purpose. Not far from the famous pyramids of Giza stands a curious monument that has baffled historians and architects for centuries. Known today as the Bent Pyramid, its shape is unlike any other pyramid in Egypt. Instead of straight, clean lines rising to a sharp peak, its sides abruptly change angle about halfway up, giving it a strange, bent appearance. This unusual design raises questions that remain unanswered, even though the pyramid has been standing for more than 4,500 years. The Bent Pyramid was built during the reign of Pharaoh Sneferu, the father of Khufu, who built the Great Pyramid. Around 2600 BCE, Sneferu commissioned this structure at the royal necropolis of Dashur. At first, it seems like a normal pyramid, but the change in its slope from about 54 degrees near the base to roughly 43 degrees halfway up is striking. Scholars have long debated why this sudden shift happened. Was it a mistake during construction, or was it deliberate? The answer remains unclear. One theory suggests that the builders encountered structural problems as the pyramid rose. Early attempts to build steep sides may have caused cracks or instability in the lower levels, forcing them to reduce the angle to avoid collapse. The bent pyramid might then represent a sort of trial and error in pyramid design. However, this theory doesn't fully explain why such a large and important project would proceed with obvious flaws. Builders of the time were experienced, and such a mistake on this scale would have been costly and embarrassing. Others believe the change in angle was planned from the beginning, perhaps for symbolic reasons. In Egyptian religion, the shape of the pyramid was connected to the sun's rays and the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. Some experts think the bent pyramid's twist represents a transition or transformation, maybe symbolizing the pharaoh's path from earthly life to the divine realm. The lower, steeper part could symbolize the earth or mortal world, while the gentler upper slope reflects the heavens or spiritual ascent. Inside the pyramid, there are further mysteries. Unlike other pyramids, the Bent Pyramid has two entrances, one on the north side and another on the west. Both lead to separate chambers, with the inner passages lined with red and black granite. The chambers themselves are unusually decorated for a pyramid of this era, with smooth walls and traces of polished stonework. This dual design raises questions about the pyramid's true function and whether it was meant to serve more than one purpose. Excavations have also revealed evidence that the bent pyramid's casing, the smooth limestone blocks that once covered its surface, was unusually well preserved compared to other pyramids. This outer layer gives us a rare look at how pyramids might have appeared in their original form, gleaming white under the Egyptian sun. Yet this preservation adds to the puzzle. If the pyramid was structurally unsound, why was so much effort put into the outer casing? Why maintain such a flawless exterior if the building itself had problems inside? Adding to the intrigue is the nearby Red Pyramid, also built by Sneferu just a few kilometers away. The Red Pyramid has a consistent slope and is considered the first successful true pyramid in Egypt. Some scholars argue that the bent pyramid was an experimental step leading to the Red Pyramid's smoother design. But that still leaves questions about why the bent pyramid was never finished or altered to match the newer style. Another unusual feature is the way the pyramid interacts with the surrounding landscape. The bent pyramid is built on a relatively flat plane, but some researchers have suggested it may align with certain stars or solar events. This would fit with Egyptian beliefs about the pharaoh's soul journeying among the stars after death. However, no definitive alignment has been confirmed, leaving this theory speculative but intriguing. More mysterious still are ancient texts and later writings that reference the pyramid but offer little clarity on its meaning. Unlike the Great Pyramid, which inspired countless stories and legends, the bent pyramid remains somewhat forgotten, overshadowed by its neighbors. Perhaps its odd shape made it less admired, or perhaps its purpose was deliberately hidden. At Dahshur, the bent pyramid still stands quietly, showing the early steps of Egypt's pyramid design. Its twisted shape challenges our understanding of ancient engineering and religious symbolism. It raises a question that remains unanswered. Was the bend a mistake or a message? Until we find more evidence, the bent pyramid keeps its secrets, standing bent but unbroken through millennia. The Dendera light reliefs. Deep within the ancient temple complex at Dendera, not far from the Nile River, lies a set of carvings that have puzzled historians, engineers, and conspiracy theorists alike. These reliefs, etched into the stone walls of the Temple of Hathor, show strange objects that look remarkably like modern electric light bulbs. For decades, their meaning has been debated, sparking questions that remain unanswered. The Temple of Hathor was built mainly during the Ptolemaic period, around 50 BCE, long after the height of Egypt's Old and Middle Kingdoms. Its walls are covered in detailed carvings depicting religious scenes and rituals dedicated to the goddess Hathor. Among these are some unusual images, large oval shapes with a snake-like form inside, connected to long rods held by figures that look like priests or gods. To the casual observer, these shapes look like glowing light bulbs, complete with a filament twisting inside. Egyptologists, however, have long rejected the idea that these reliefs show electrical devices. They explain that the oval shapes represent lotus flowers or papyrus plants, common symbols in Egyptian art linked to creation and rebirth. The snake inside the oval is understood to be the serpent god, representing life force and divine power. The rods and tubes are often interpreted as ritual staffs or lotus stems. Despite this, the exact meaning of the images is unclear, and no one has definitively explained why they resemble bulbs and cables so closely. The mystery deepened in the 19th and 20th centuries when some researchers and writers began suggesting that the ancient Egyptians may have had access to advanced technology lost to history. These ideas were popularized in books and documentaries, claiming the reliefs were evidence of ancient electrical lighting. They argued that the Egyptians used these devices to light their temples and tombs, allowing them to work in dark underground chambers without torches or oil lamps. This theory has never been accepted by mainstream scholars. There is no archaeological evidence of electrical wiring, batteries, or power sources from ancient Egypt. Most experts believe the reliefs are symbolic, representing mythological and religious concepts rather than technology. But the similarity between the shapes and modern light bulbs continues to captivate the imagination. Adding to the intrigue, the reliefs appear in a hidden crypt beneath the main temple, a place not meant for ordinary visitors. The walls are covered in darkened, soot-like marks, suggesting they may have once been illuminated by some form of light. This fuels speculation that the crypt was used for secret rituals, possibly involving mysterious devices or knowledge lost over time. Recent experiments by engineers have aimed to bring the Dendera light back to life through ancient construction methods. They built replicas resembling the bulb shape carved in the reliefs and tested if they could produce light by filling glass tubes with gases or using chemical reactions. While these experiments generated some faint light, they fell far short of the brightness and practicality required to light large spaces. It suggests that even if the images represent lighting devices, they would have been very limited in use. The debate over the Dendera reliefs reveals more about how we interpret ancient symbols than about lost technologies. The Egyptians used complex iconography to express ideas about life, death, the gods, and the cosmos. Their art was meant to be read on multiple levels: literal, symbolic, and spiritual. The light bulb shapes may have been a way to show the divine energy flowing through the temple, not a blueprint for electrical engineering. Still, the mystery lingers because the reliefs remain unlike any others found in Egypt or elsewhere. No other temple shows similar images. No known texts describe lighting devices, and the detailed craftsmanship of the carvings makes it unlikely they were simple mistakes or abstract symbols. Visitors to the Temple of Hathor can see these reliefs for themselves, tracing their fingers over the carved stone and wondering what the ancient artists intended. The images seem to reach across thousands of years, inviting us to question what we know about ancient technology, religion, and the limits of human knowledge. Whether the Dendera lights were divine symbols or hints of forgotten science, they continue to inspire awe and mystery. The disappearance of Queen Nefertiti. Few figures from ancient Egypt capture the imagination quite like Queen Nefertiti. Known for her striking beauty and powerful presence, she was the great royal wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten during the 18th dynasty around 1350 BCE. Yet, despite her prominence in art and history, her final fate remains a mystery. After years of influence, she simply vanishes from the historical record, leaving scholars to wonder what truly happened to her. It was in 1912 that Ludwig Borchardt discovered the painted bust of Nefertiti at Amarna, creating her most lasting image. The bust shows a woman with a tall, flat-topped blue crown, delicate features, and an expression that has fascinated people for over a century. Nefertiti ruled alongside Akhenaten during a time of great religious upheaval. Together, they promoted the worship of Aten, the sun disk, breaking from traditional Egyptian polytheism. Her disappearance from records begins around the 12th year of Akhenaten's reign. Up until then, Nefertiti appears frequently in inscriptions and reliefs, often depicted as co-ruler. Some even believe she may have taken on full pharaonic powers, ruling independently for a short time. But after this point, references to her stop suddenly. No clear explanation is given, and the reasons remain hotly debated. One popular theory suggests that Nefertiti died relatively young, perhaps due to illness or complications from childbirth. Supporting this idea, a tomb discovered in Amarna, known as Tomb 55, contains the remains of a woman who some believe may be Nefertiti. The tomb was found in the early 20th century but was badly damaged and looted. Attempts to identify the skeletons found there through modern forensic tests have been inconclusive, fueling ongoing speculation. Recent CT scans of the Amarna tomb's female remains revealed unusual bone structures, suggesting the woman may have suffered from scoliosis, a detail that some believe matches descriptions of Nefertiti's health. Another theory proposes that Nefertiti did not die, but instead took on a new identity, possibly ruling under a different name. Some scholars suggest she became the mysterious pharaoh Neferneferuaten, who briefly reigned toward the end of Akhenaten's rule. Additionally, several inscriptions from the late Amarna period mention a royal woman named Neferneferuaten, whose identity is still debated but is often linked to Nefertiti's possible reign as pharaoh. This pharaoh's gender remains unclear, with some arguing that Nefertiti stepped in as a female pharaoh to maintain the Atenist religion after Akhenaten's death. Others argue that political upheaval forced her into obscurity. After Akhenaten died, Egypt quickly returned to traditional religious beliefs led by Tutankhamun and his advisors. The Atenist cult was suppressed, temples were destroyed, and names erased from records in a campaign historians call the Amarna heresy. If Nefertiti had aligned herself closely with Akhenaten's radical changes, she may have been deliberately written out of history to prevent her memory from influencing future rulers. Complicating matters further, no one knows where Nefertiti was buried. Some believe she was buried in Amarna alongside Akhenaten, but no definitive tomb has been identified. Others suggest her remains may have been moved or destroyed during later efforts to erase the Amarna period. Despite numerous excavations and searches, no tomb matching her status or name has been found. Fresh discoveries have brought the mystery back into the spotlight. In 2015, a team working in the Valley of the Kings uncovered a hidden chamber in the tomb of Tutankhamun. Some experts speculated it might lead to the burial place of Nefertiti, but further investigations found no conclusive evidence. Still, the possibility that her tomb lies undiscovered somewhere in the vast necropolis keeps hopes alive. Nefertiti's disappearance is more than just a historical puzzle. It reflects the larger story of Egypt's most turbulent period, where religion, politics, and power collided. Her absence from records reminds us that ancient history is shaped by more than just facts. It is shaped by what people choose to remember and what they choose to forget. Across the globe, the image of Nefertiti continues to fuel imagination in art, literature, and culture. She stands as a symbol of beauty, power, and mystery. Despite all the research, the truth about her final days remains hidden beneath layers of stone, sand, and silence. For now, the queen, with the exquisite crown, remains one of ancient Egypt's greatest mysteries. The secret chamber in the Great Pyramid. For centuries, the Great Pyramid of Giza stood as the tallest man-made structure in the world and one of the most studied monuments of ancient Egypt. Built around 2560 BCE during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, its massive blocks and precise alignment have fascinated explorers and scholars for generations. Despite countless surveys and excavations, the pyramid still holds secrets beneath its smooth surfaces, secrets that modern technology only recently began to reveal. Using muon radiography, a team of scientists uncovered an unexpected find within the Great Pyramid in 2017. Muons are tiny particles that rain down from space and can pass through solid objects, but denser materials block or slow them down. By placing sensitive detectors inside and around the pyramid, researchers could map hidden spaces within its stone layers without digging or damaging the structure. This non-invasive method revealed a previously unknown, large void high above the Grand Gallery, the main passageway leading to the king's chamber. The newly found space measures about 30 meters long and is located above the Grand Gallery, but its exact purpose remains unknown. Unlike the known chambers and corridors, this hidden void is empty and undisturbed, offering no visible signs of entrance or connection. the discovery sent ripples through the archaeological community. Was it an unfinished part of the pyramid, a secret burial chamber, or something else entirely? Previous attempts to explore the pyramid's interior relied on physical access through narrow shafts and corridors, but the new chamber is inaccessible by these routes. The muon scans confirmed the space's size and shape, but could not reveal what lies within its walls. Some researchers suggest it may have been designed to relieve pressure on the chambers below, acting as a sort of architectural buffer to protect the burial chamber from the immense weight of the stones above. Others have proposed more mysterious theories. Some believe it could be a hidden burial chamber meant to protect Khufu's remains from robbers. Despite the Great Pyramid being looted thousands of years ago, no definitive tomb or mummy of Khufu has ever been found inside. This secret chamber might hold clues to where the pharaoh was finally laid to rest. The idea that the pyramid holds undiscovered burial chambers is not new. Over centuries, treasure hunters and archaeologists searched for secret rooms, but the sheer size and complexity of the pyramid made it difficult. Many thought the known chambers were the only significant spaces. The 2017 discovery proved otherwise, showing that even after thousands of years, the pyramid still guards mysteries beneath its stones. The discovery also raised questions about the pyramid's construction methods. How did the ancient builders create such a large space high within the structure without causing it to collapse? The precision and engineering skills needed to achieve this are staggering, especially considering the tools available at the time. It suggests a level of planning and architectural knowledge far beyond what many previously believed. Archaeologists also consider the symbolic meaning of hidden spaces in Egyptian architecture. Pyramids were not just tombs, but also spiritual monuments designed to help the pharaoh ascend to the afterlife. Hidden chambers might have served ritual purposes, places where sacred ceremonies were conducted away from the public eye. These secret rooms could represent transitions between the earthly and divine worlds, known only to priests and the king. Efforts to explore the chamber directly face many challenges. The pyramid is a protected heritage site, and drilling or excavation risks damaging one of the world's most iconic monuments. Scientists continue to develop new scanning technologies that could peer inside without harm. Future missions may one day reveal the contents of the secret space, but for now, it remains a silent mystery, waiting patiently beneath thousands of tons of stone. Visitors to the Great Pyramid often marvel at its size and precision, but might not realize how much remains hidden. The secret chamber reminds us that even the most famous ancient wonders still hold surprises. The Great Pyramid is more than just a tomb or monument. It is a complex puzzle from a civilization that continues to intrigue and inspire. As technology advances, so too does our chance to unlock the secrets carved in stone thousands of years ago. The unfinished obelisk of Aswan. Nestled in the ancient quarry of Aswan lies one of Egypt's most fascinating mysteries, the unfinished obelisk. This massive stone monument, carved directly from the granite bedrock, was never completed or moved from its original place. Its enormous size and abrupt abandonment have puzzled historians and archaeologists for centuries, raising questions about ancient Egyptian technology, engineering, and the reasons behind its sudden halt. The unfinished obelisk dates back to the reign of Pharaoh Hatshepsut around 1450 BCE, during the 18th dynasty. It was intended to be the largest obelisk ever created, measuring approximately 42 meters long and weighing close to 1,200 tons. If finished, it would have towered over any other obelisk in Egypt and stood as a powerful symbol of royal authority and divine connection. At first glance, the obelisk appears to be a normal monument, smooth and polished on one side, with inscriptions carved into its surface. But closer inspection reveals that it remains attached to the bedrock on its other sides, with deep cracks running through the granite. These cracks likely caused the workers to abandon the project, as they would have made the obelisk unsafe to transport and prone to breaking during erection. The quarry itself offers a glimpse into how ancient Egyptians worked with stone on a grand scale. Tools made from copper, stone, and later bronze were used to carve the obelisk out of solid rock. Workers would chip away at the granite using dolerite ballshard. Rounded stonesto gradually shaped the monolith. The sheer size of the unfinished obelisk shows the impressive skill and patience required, but it also hints at the risks involved. Transporting an obelisk of this size was a major engineering challenge. The ancient Egyptians had to move these massive stones from quarries to temples and public spaces, often over long distances. The exact methods they used remain debated, but many believe sledges, ramps, and large teams of workers were involved. The unfinished obelisk never made this journey, stuck in the quarry as a reminder of the difficulties faced. Archaeologists believe the cracks that caused the abandonment formed early in the carving process. They noticed that the fractures run deep into the stone, suggesting natural faults within the granite that would have been difficult to spot before excavation. Once discovered, the builders wisely stopped to avoid wasting resources on a flawed piece. The unfinished state of the obelisk has turned it into a valuable tool for modern researchers. It provides a rare chance to study ancient Egyptian quarrying techniques and understand the step-by-step process used to create these massive monuments. Marks from tools, measurements carved into the stone, and partially polished surfaces all tell a story about the labor and craftsmanship behind these wonders. Visitors to the Aswan quarry can still see the unfinished obelisk lying where it was left thousands of years ago. Its sheer size and the visible cracks leave a strong impression. Standing beside it, it's easy to imagine the workers who chipped away at the granite, the engineers who planned its creation, and the moment when they realized it could not be completed. The mystery of the unfinished obelisk also raises questions about ancient Egyptian priorities. Why would they abandon such a significant project instead of trying to fix the cracks or carve a smaller monument? Some experts suggest that safety concerns and the high cost of repairs made it unfeasible. Others think political changes or shifting religious practices may have caused the work to stop. The obelisk also challenges modern ideas about ancient technology. Moving and erecting stones weighing hundreds of tons without modern machinery was an extraordinary feat. The failure of the unfinished obelisk reminds us that even the most advanced ancient engineers faced limits and obstacles. In many ways, the unfinished obelisk serves as a symbol of human ambition and the risks that come with grand projects. It stands as a testament to the Egyptians' desire to reach for greatness, balanced by the realities of nature and material limits. Its story is one of vision, skill, and the unexpected challenges that can change history. As an open-air museum today, the quarry allows people to witness the enduring marks of ancient stone shaping. The unfinished obelisk continues to inspire wonder, reminding us that not all mysteries are lost to time. Some remain visible, frozen in stone, waiting for us to uncover their stories. The incorruptible body of Seti I. Deep within the Valley of the Kings lies the tomb of Seti I, one of ancient Egypt's greatest pharaohs. Seti ruled during the 19th dynasty, around 1290 to 1279 BCE, and was known for restoring Egypt's power after years of decline. When his tomb was discovered in 1817 by Giovanni Battista Belzoni, archaeologists found something that would become one of the most remarkable mysteries in Egyptology. Seti's body appeared almost perfectly preserved, resisting decay in a way rarely seen. Unlike many other mummies that have deteriorated over time, Seti I's body remained surprisingly intact, with skin, hair, and facial features still visible centuries after his death. His black hair was still on his head, and his skin retained an unusual softness, defying the normal mummification processes that usually left bodies dried and brittle. This raised questions about whether his embalming was different from standard practices, or if natural conditions in his tomb somehow preserved him better than others. Early examinations of Seti's mummy revealed meticulous embalming techniques. His body had been treated with high-quality resins and oils, and wrapped carefully in linen bandages. The embalmers appeared to have taken extraordinary care, using substances with antimicrobial properties that slowed decomposition. Some experts believe that the preservation was intentional, meant to honor a pharaoh who had restored the greatness of Egypt. The tomb itself adds to the mystery. Seti I's burial chamber was designed to protect his body from grave robbers and natural decay. Deep in the Valley of the Kings, the tomb's chambers are carved into solid rock, providing stable temperatures and humidity levels. These conditions may have contributed to the body's unusual preservation. Yet even with ideal surroundings, other mummies have not survived as well, making Seti's case exceptional. For years, scientists debated whether Seti's body had undergone treatments now lost to time. Some theories suggest that secret embalming recipes or special herbs were used to enhance preservation. Others propose that the body's condition might result from an unknown natural process or a combination of factors, including embalming, the tomb environment, and the quality of the linen wrappings. Modern technology has offered more insights. In recent decades, CT scans and X-rays have allowed researchers to examine the mummy without unwrapping it. These studies showed that Seti's organs were carefully removed and treated, and his bones remained strong. Some scans even revealed faint traces of ancient tattoos, though these remain a topic of debate among experts. Despite the incredible preservation, Seti's mummy has not escaped damage. In the 19th century, tomb robbers and early archaeologists often handled mummies without proper care. The body suffered some harm over time, including damage to the face and limbs. Yet, remarkably, much of the original preservation remains visible, a testament to the skill of the ancient embalmers. Seti I's mummy also inspired myths and legends. Early travelers to Egypt heard tales of the incorruptible pharaoh, whose body was said to be protected by divine forces. Some stories claimed that the mummy emitted a strange glow, or that it resisted attempts to be moved or disturbed. While these accounts are likely exaggerated, they show how Seti's preservation captured the imagination of people through the ages. In Egypt today, Seti's mummy is kept in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, where it draws crowds fascinated by its condition and history. It serves as a window into ancient Egyptian burial practices and the reverence given to pharaohs who were believed to become gods after death. The care taken with Seti's body reflects the importance of the afterlife in Egyptian culture and the desire to maintain the pharaoh's power even beyond death. Seti I's incorruptible body continues to puzzle experts, a reminder that ancient Egypt harbors many hidden secrets. The precise methods behind his preservation may never be fully understood, but the evidence of extraordinary care speaks to the remarkable knowledge and beliefs of a civilization that thrived thousands of years ago. As visitors stand before Seti's mummy, they witness not just a body frozen in time, but a story of devotion, skill, and the eternal quest to conquer death. His incorruptible form continues to inspire awe and wonder, connecting us to the mysteries of the ancient world that endure beneath the sands of Egypt. The Saqqara bird's flight plan. In the vast Egyptian desert near the ancient burial grounds of Saqqara, a small wooden artifact has sparked a mystery that still puzzles researchers today. Known as the Saqqara bird, this object looks like a tiny model of a bird with wings and a tail, measuring only about 15 centimeters long. It was discovered in a tomb during the early 20th century and has since been the subject of debate over its purpose and meaning. The Saqqara bird dates back over 2,000 years to around 200 BCE, during the late period of ancient Egypt. Unlike the grand monuments and statues typically found in tombs, this wooden figure is simple but carefully carved from sycamore wood. Its wings are slightly curved and the tail is forked, resembling a modern glider or airplane. This unique shape has led some to question whether it was simply a toy or something much more unusual. Many Egyptologists believe the bird was a ritual object, possibly symbolizing the soul's journey after death. In Egyptian mythology, the soul was often represented as a bird called the Ba, which could leave the body and fly freely between worlds. The Saqqara bird may have been designed to represent this spiritual concept, helping the deceased in their passage to the afterlife. This theory fits well with its discovery in a funerary context. However, the shape and design of the Saqqara bird have also attracted attention from aviation enthusiasts and alternative researchers. When tested in wind tunnels, the model showed aerodynamic qualities similar to modern gliders. Some argue it could have been a toy that demonstrated basic principles of flight, or even a prototype for early understanding of aerodynamics. This idea challenges the common belief that ancient Egyptians did not know flight beyond birds and kites. Critics of the flight theory point out that the bird's wings are not shaped precisely like those of real birds or modern aircraft, and the tail doesn't seem to provide the stability needed for controlled flight. Without evidence of engines, propellers, or other flight technology, it's unlikely the Saqqara bird was ever meant to actually fly. Instead, it may have been a symbolic or decorative piece with no practical use in aviation. The artifact's discovery location also adds to the mystery. Found in a tomb near the Pyramid of Seti, the bird was placed among other burial goods that held spiritual significance. This context supports the idea that it was linked to religious beliefs rather than technological innovation. The ancient Egyptians were skilled at using symbolism in their art and funerary objects, often blending everyday items with deep spiritual meaning. Regardless of differing theories, the Saqqara bird holds a lasting fascination for many around the world. Its unusual design invites speculation about what the ancient Egyptians understood about flight and how they expressed complex ideas through simple objects. Whether a toy, a symbol, or something else entirely, the bird reminds us that ancient cultures often held knowledge and beliefs that don't fit neatly into modern categories. Lately, attention has turned to examining the bird's construction techniques. Experts note that the wood is lightweight and that the wings were shaped carefully to balance the model. Some tests even showed that if thrown correctly, the bird could glide short distances. These findings add weight to the idea that it was designed to mimic flight in some way, whether as a plaything or as a tool for teaching. Through the Saqqara bird, we gain insight into the ancient Egyptians' relationship with the natural world. Birds were everywhere along the Nile, and their flight likely inspired many myths and artworks. This small wooden figure captures that fascination and perhaps reflects an early curiosity about the principles that allow flight. On display in Cairo's Egyptian Museum, the Saqqara bird attracts visitors fascinated by its unresolved secrets. It stands as a reminder that not all ancient Egyptian artifacts are fully understood, and some may hold clues to ideas and knowledge lost over time. As we look at the Saqqara bird, we are reminded that ancient Egypt was a civilization full of wondersome, clear, and well documented, others subtle and puzzling. Whether it flew through the air or soared through the imagination, this tiny wooden bird remains a symbol of human creativity and the endless quest to understand the world. The hidden curse of KV55. In the Valley of the Kings, among the many tombs carved into the rocky cliffs, lies KV55A, small and mysterious burial chamber that has baffled archaeologists since its discovery in 1907. Unlike the grand tombs nearby, KV55 is modest in size but rich in mystery. Its occupant remains uncertain, and the tomb has become infamous for the strange and sometimes tragic events surrounding those who studied it. The tomb was uncovered by the young British archaeologist Edward R. Ayrton while working for Theodore Davis. Inside, they found a single coffin containing a badly damaged mummy, along with a collection of funerary items. The coffin's inscriptions were partly erased, and the tomb showed signs of hurried reuse or disturbance. This unusual condition immediately raised questions about the identity of the person buried there. At first, some believed the tomb belonged to Queen Taye, the powerful wife of Amenhotep III and grandmother of Tutankhamun. Others argued it was the burial place of the mysterious pharaoh Akhenaten, who had dramatically changed Egyptian religion during his reign around 1350 BCE. More recent studies suggest the mummy could be that of Saqqara, a little-known successor to Akhenaten. The lack of clear evidence makes it difficult to draw firm conclusions, leaving KV55's occupant a puzzle. Tales of a curse have surrounded the tomb, sparked by the unfortunate events that plagued many involved in its discovery and study. Edward Ayrton himself died just a few years after the discovery, and Theodore Davis lost much of his fortune and reputation. Later, researchers and museum workers connected to KV55 also faced unusual accidents and illnesses, sparking fears that a supernatural force guarded the tomb. These stories, while dramatic, are often explained by the dangers of working in the harsh desert environment and the risks of early 20th century archaeology. Dust, heat, and lack of medical knowledge made excavations dangerous. Still, the notion of a curse captured the public imagination and helped build the legend of KV55. The contents of the tomb add to the mystery. Among the artifacts found were fragments of a gold funerary mask, a shrine, and several canopic jars used to store the mummy's internal organs. The coffin's damaged state suggested it had been moved or reused, possibly during the chaotic end of the Amarna period, when Akhenaten's religious reforms were abandoned. Scientists have since analyzed the mummy itself, trying to determine the age and sex of the individual. Results have been conflicting. Some studies indicated a young male around 20 years old, while others suggested an older man. The poor condition of the remains complicates identification and fuels ongoing debate. The tomb's location in the Valley of the Kings is also unusual. KV55 lies close to the tomb of Tutankhamun, raising questions about connections between the occupants. Some theories propose that KV55 was a temporary burial place, or that the individual was reburied hurriedly to protect their remains during times of political upheaval. Modern technology has helped shed light on the mystery. DNA tests and CT scans have provided clues, but no definitive answers. The complex family relationships of the 18th dynasty, with intermarriages and rivalries, make it difficult to place the KV55 mummy in the royal lineage with certainty. While uncertainty surrounds it, KV55 continues to play an essential role in Egypt's history. It represents a turbulent period when religion, power, and identity were in flux. The tomb's disturbed state reflects the political and religious changes that shook Egypt at the end of the Amarna era. At the Valley of the Kings, visitors can explore the tiny chamber of KV55, imagining the secrets it guards. The stories of curses and strange deaths add an eerie atmosphere, but the real mystery lies in the silent stones and fragile remains inside. KV55 reminds us that even the most studied ancient sites can hold secrets that resist explanation. The tomb's occupant remains unknown, the curse unproven, but the fascination endures. As technology advances and discoveries are made, perhaps one day, the hidden story of KV-55 will finally be told. Until then, it stands as a silent witness to Egypt's most mysterious times, the golden tongues of the dead. Among the many fascinating burial customs of ancient Egypt, one of the most mysterious involves the use of golden tongues placed inside the mouths of certain mummies. These small gold foil plates, shaped roughly like tongues, have been found in a handful of tombs dating from the New Kingdom period, roughly 1550 to 1070 BCE. Their purpose remains unclear, but their presence has sparked deep curiosity and a wide range of theories, some rooted in religion and others in magic or lost technology. The golden tongues were carefully crafted from thin sheets of gold, a material that ancient Egyptians associated with the divine and eternal. Most often, they have been found in the tombs of high-ranking individuals, including priests and nobles, indicating their importance was reserved for the elite or those with particular spiritual roles. In Egyptian belief, the journey after death was complex and full of challenges. The soul needed to pass various tests and be able to communicate with gods and guardians along the way. Some scholars believe that the golden tongue was meant to ensure the deceased could speak clearly and effectively in the afterlife, perhaps during the crucial judgment before Osiris, the god of the dead. Speech was considered vital for declaring innocence and reciting spells from the Book of the Dead. The golden tongues vary in size and shape, and not all mummies that receive them share the same social status or religious role. Some tongues are decorated with hieroglyphs or patterns, while others are plain, raising the possibility that the practice evolved over time or had different meanings in different regions or periods. Their rarity adds to their mystery. Only a few have been discovered among the thousands of tombs excavated, suggesting this was not a common ritual, but rather a specialized practice with a specific purpose. This scarcity has made it difficult for archaeologists to piece together a complete picture of how and why they were used, leading to ongoing debate and speculation. Several experts propose that the golden tongues could have had a magical function beyond mere symbolism. Gold was believed to possess protective and healing powers, and placing a golden tongue inside the mouth might have been thought to preserve the voice and protect it from decay or evil forces. This idea fits with the broader Egyptian practice of using amulets and magical objects to guard the body and soul in death. Others have looked for connections between the golden tongues and the Egyptian concept of Heka, or magic, which was central to many religious rites. The tongue could have been seen as a tool to empower the deceased, enabling them to perform spells and commands necessary to navigate the afterlife successfully. In this view, the golden tongue was more than a symbol, it was an active source of supernatural power. Scientific analysis of some golden tongues has revealed interesting details. Microscopic studies show that the gold sheets were hammered with great skill to achieve extreme thinness without breaking. In some cases, traces of resin or other substances have been found on the foil, suggesting they might have been attached to the mummy's real tongue or held in place inside the mouth. This careful placement highlights the importance of the object. Beyond their own mystery, the golden tongues invite us to reconsider the broader rituals of mummification and burial. Ancient embalmers took great care to preserve the body's integrity and prepare it for the journey to the afterlife. Despite their significance, golden tongues remain a puzzle. The lack of detailed texts explaining their use leaves room for interpretation, and much of what we understand comes from comparisons with other burial items and religious beliefs. Each discovery offers new clues, but also deepens the mystery, showing that ancient Egypt's spiritual world was far more complex than we often imagine. Museum goers encountering these tiny golden tongues often overlook the deep spiritual and magical meaning they once carried for those laid to rest with them. These tiny artifacts connect us to the hopes, fears, and beliefs of people who lived thousands of years ago, reaching across time with a silent golden voice. As modern science and archaeology continue to explore these enigmatic objects, we are reminded that ancient Egypt still holds many secrets. The golden tongues of the dead challenge us to think beyond the physical and to consider the power of speech, magic, and faith in a civilization obsessed with eternity. Their story is a testament to human creativity and the enduring quest to speak beyond death. The shattered statue of Khafre. In the shadow of the Great Pyramid at Giza stands a statue that once represented one of Egypt's most powerful pharaohs, Khafre, builder of the second pyramid and possibly the face of the Great Sphinx. This statue, carved from a single block of diorite, is a masterpiece of ancient Egyptian art, admired for its lifelike detail and imposing presence. Yet, what makes it truly mysterious is the damage it has suffered over the centuries, leaving it shattered and incomplete, raising questions about how and why this royal image was broken. Khafre's statue was discovered in the early 20th century during excavations near his valley temple. The figure sits on a throne with the pharaoh's regal posture carefully carved to convey both strength and divine authority. His face, though damaged, still reveals the calm expression and youthful vigor that artists aimed to capture. Despite its broken condition, the statue remains one of the finest examples of Old Kingdom sculpture, showcasing the skill and artistic vision of ancient craftsmen. The damage to the statue is striking. Scholars have debated whether this destruction was the result of natural causes, such as earthquakes or erosion, or deliberate human actions. The possibility of intentional defacement is supported by the fact that other royal statues and monuments from the same era were targeted during periods of political upheaval or religious change. Throughout Egyptian history, the erasure of a ruler's image was a powerful political statement. It was often done to condemn a pharaoh's legacy or to weaken their hold on the afterlife, as the preservation of one's image was closely tied to immortality. Khafre's statue might have suffered this fate during times when his successors or rival factions sought to rewrite history. The scars on the statue could be the visible marks of such ancient conflicts, frozen forever in stone. Another theory suggests that the damage occurred much later, perhaps during the Middle Ages or early modern period, when invading armies or local populations might have vandalized the statue. The region's turbulent history, including periods of conquest and religious iconoclasm, often led to the destruction of monuments linked to the old gods and pharaohs. In this view, the shattered condition of Khafre's statue is a tragic result of cultural and historical shifts over millennia. Diorite is an extremely hard stone, chosen for its durability and ability to be polished to a high shine. The fact that the statue has survived at all, despite its damage, speaks to the skill of ancient Egyptian artisans and the care taken to honor the pharaoh. Yet, even the hardest stone could not escape the forces of time and human interference. These broken pieces, scattered in the vicinity, hint at the statue's original grandeur and the extent of its destruction. Archaeologists continue to study these fragments, hoping to reconstruct more of the statue's history and perhaps better understand the events that led to its shattering. While Khafre's pyramid still stands tall and the Sphinx guards the desert, this shattered statue reminds us that even the greatest rulers are subject to the passage of time and the changing tides of history. Modern technology has helped preserve and study the statue in ways ancient Egyptians never imagined. Laser scanning and 3D modeling allow researchers to examine the statue's surface in detail, revealing traces of paint and tool marks that hint at its original appearance. These digital tools also aid in virtual reconstruction efforts, offering glimpses of how the statue might have looked before it was broken. The shattered statue of Khafre is more than a relic. It is a witness to Egypt's complex history, where art, politics, religion, and time converge. Its fractures speak of human hands, those that created it with reverence, and those that may have sought to destroy it. This duality captures the essence of Egypt's enduring mysteries and the ongoing quest to understand a civilization that continues to captivate the world. Ultimately, the statue represents more than just a pharaoh's likeness. It symbolizes resilience in the face of adversity. Its broken form challenges us to look beyond perfection and appreciate the stories etched into every crack and chip. The story of Khafre's shattered statue is one of resilience and enigma, inviting us to explore the shadows of history and the echoes of a lost empire. The pyramid texts ominous warnings. The walls inside Egypt's ancient pyramids are far more than stone surfaces. They carry voices from thousands of years ago, etched with spells, prayers, and warnings. These inscriptions, called the pyramid texts, date back to the Old Kingdom around 2400 to 2300 BCE and are among the oldest religious writings known, found mainly in the pyramids at Saqqara, especially in the tombs of kings like Unas and Seti. These texts hold ominous warnings that continue to puzzle historians and archaeologists. The pyramid texts were meant to guide the deceased king's soul through the afterlife and help him ascend to join the gods. But these inscriptions are not only comforting, they include fierce curses aimed at anyone who dares disturb the tomb, threatening death and eternal punishment. Since their initial uncovering in the late 19th century, these ancient inscriptions have sparked intense scholarly debate and fascination, with each new translation peeling back layers of religious belief, political power, and cultural anxiety that shaped early Egyptian civilization. The language is harsh and direct, warning potential tomb robbers and desecrators of serious consequences. Written in old Egyptian hieroglyphs arranged in columns along burial chamber walls, the texts mix religious hymns, protective spells, and vivid descriptions of the afterlife. Yet within these sacred words lie clear warnings targeting outsiders who would violate the tomb's sanctity. This blend of ritual and protection creates an eerie sense that the stones themselves guard the pharaoh's resting place. One of the best-known examples is in the Pyramid of Unas, last king of the 5th dynasty. His tomb's walls are covered with curses such as, "May your name be erased from the land of the living, and may your corpse be destroyed, your soul lost forever." The Egyptians believed that once spoken or inscribed, a curse held real power, affecting both this world and the next. These severe warnings reflect the tomb's vital role as a gateway to eternal life. Preserving the body and the tomb's inviolability was essential for the soul's survival. Any intrusion threatened the delicate balance needed for the pharaoh's rebirth among the gods. The pyramid texts thus served as spiritual guides and legal deterrents, combining faith with practical protection. Archaeologists also note that these texts contain spells designed to neutralize enemies and obstacles in the afterlife. Powerful gods like Osiris, Anubis, and Horus are called upon to defend the tomb and punish wrongdoers. The vivid imagery of divine justice creates a world where evil cannot go unpunished, and the sacred resting place remains fiercely protected. Although these cautions were inscribed, many pyramids fell victim to robbers shortly after they were completed. The presence of such curses shows how serious the threat was and how far the Egyptians went to protect their sacred sites. Religious fear and belief acted as a cultural safeguard, even if it did not always succeed. Besides curses, the pyramid texts offer insight into Egyptian beliefs about death and rebirth. They describe the king joining the sun god Ra and becoming one with eternal divinity. These hopeful passages stand in sharp contrast to the brutal warnings, revealing a complex worldview where fear and hope coexist. The texts promise resurrection and eternal life alongside threats of doom. Scholars continue to study and translate these ancient writings, but much remains uncertain. The archaic language and symbolism challenge experts. Some passages repeat, others are damaged or incomplete, leaving gaps in understanding. The mix of ritual, magic, and legal threats makes these texts unique, offering a glimpse into early Egypt's spiritual and social concerns. At Saqqara, the pyramid's inscriptions still carry a heavy weight that resonates with modern visitors. The walls, covered in intricate hieroglyphs, hold silent power echoing across millennia. The ominous warnings remind us of a civilization deeply invested in the afterlife and fiercely protective of its sacred spaces. The pyramid texts endure as religious masterpieces and testaments to ancient hopes and fears. At their core, the pyramid texts' warnings reveal how ancient Egyptians saw life and death as divided by spells, gods, and curses. The Egyptians believed words shaped reality, and the soul's fate depended on divine favor and respect from the living. These inscriptions continue to mystify and captivate, inviting us to listen closely to the voices etched in stone and consider the power they once wielded. The mysterious tomb of Osiris. The legend of Osiris, one of ancient Egypt's most revered gods, has fascinated historians, archaeologists, and mystics for centuries, not just because of his role as god of the afterlife and resurrection, but also due to the enduring mystery surrounding his final resting place. Ancient texts describe Osiris as having been killed and dismembered by his jealous brother Set, only to be miraculously restored to life by his wife Isis. Despite this dramatic story, etched into the very foundations of Egyptian mythology, no one has ever definitively located the tomb where Osiris was said to be buried. This absence continues to provoke questions and fuel speculation that range from the spiritual to the archaeological. In various papyri and inscriptions dating back to the New Kingdom period, roughly 1500 BCE, Osiris's tomb is described as a sacred place, hidden somewhere beneath the Nile's fertile banks, often hinted at being located near Abydos, a city that was considered a major cult center dedicated to the god. Abydos itself is home to numerous temples and funerary monuments, including the famous Temple of Seti I, built around 1300 BCE, which contains wall carvings depicting the myths of Osiris and references to his eternal kingdom. Yet, none of these monuments reveal the exact location of Osiris's tomb, as if it remains purposefully concealed to this day. Some scholars suggest that the mythological nature of Osiris's burial reflects more than a physical place. It symbolizes the cycle of death and rebirth, echoing the annual flooding of the Nile and the promise of life after death. This spiritual interpretation has made the search for his tomb a more elusive quest, blurring the lines between myth and reality. Nevertheless, numerous expeditions have attempted to uncover his burial site, each uncovering fragments of evidence, but never the tomb itself. In the early 20th century, several archaeologists, including the prominent Egyptologist Flinders Petrie, conducted excavations around Abydos, hoping to find clues. Petrie uncovered many tombs and artifacts dating back thousands of years, but the tomb of Osiris was never among them. More recently, modern technology, such as ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery, has been employed to scan the region, revealing some unusual underground structures, yet none have conclusively been identified as Osiris's final resting place. These findings only deepen the mystery, leaving room for debate about whether the tomb is hidden in plain sight or lies in a yet unexplored location. Local legends have kept the enigma alive, often told by the priests and custodians of the ancient temples in Abydos. According to some of these stories, the tomb is protected by powerful curses meant to deter any would-be intruders, preserving the sanctity of the site from human greed or disrespect. These tales, whether based in truth or myth, have contributed to the aura surrounding the search, reminding visitors and researchers alike that some secrets might be meant to remain buried. An intriguing piece of this puzzle lies in the so-called Osiris shaft, a deep vertical shaft discovered near Abydos in the early 1900s. This narrow, stone-lined shaft descends more than 30 meters into the earth, and some believe it may have been a symbolic tomb or ritual site connected to Osiris worship. Despite its striking appearance, no artifacts or remains were found inside, leaving its exact purpose a mystery. The shaft's construction, however, demonstrates the ancient Egyptians' fascination with the underworld and the afterlife, themes central to Osiris's mythology. Over the centuries, many explorers and adventurers have been captivated by the possibility of uncovering Osiris's tomb, drawn by the promise of a discovery that could rewrite the history of ancient Egypt. Despite countless attempts, the tomb remains undiscovered, as if the god himself guards the secret of his resting place, allowing only glimpses through myth and monument. This enduring mystery continues to inspire not only those who seek historical truth, but also those who wonder about the boundaries between legend and reality. Scientific tools allow us to study ancient places, but the legend of Osiris and his hidden tomb reveals that some truths extend beyond what we can measure or see. They reach into the heart of human beliefs about life, death, and what lies beyond. As research continues and new technologies emerge, the hope remains that one day the secret of the mysterious tomb of Osiris may be unveiled, offering insight not only into ancient rituals, but also into the timeless human quest for understanding what happens after death. The Abydos helicopter carvings. The ancient site of Abydos is well known for its rich collection of temples and carvings, dating back thousands of years. But among these, one particular set of images has sparked endless debate and fascination across the world. High on the walls of the Temple of Seti I, built around 1290 BCE, are unusual carvings that resemble modern aircraft shapes that some claim look like helicopters, submarines, and even spaceships. These so-called helicopter carvings have puzzled Egyptologists, conspiracy theorists, and casual visitors alike, raising questions about how such images could appear in a civilization thousands of years before modern flight was invented. The mystery continues to fuel discussions about ancient knowledge, lost technologies, and alternative history. What makes these carvings especially intriguing is their location in a temple dedicated to Seti I, a powerful pharaoh of the 19th dynasty whose reign marked a period of impressive architectural and cultural achievement. The temple walls are covered in intricate hieroglyphs and detailed reliefs depicting gods, kings, and rituals. However, it's the overlapping images in one particular scene that catch the eye. When sunlight hits the wall at certain angles, the carvings create shapes that look strikingly similar to a helicopter's rotor blades and fuselage, a submarine's body, and other mechanical forms that seem impossible for the time. This optical illusion has been called a palimpsest, created unintentionally by the Egyptians' practice of carving over earlier inscriptions. Scholars explain this strange phenomenon through the method of recarving. After Seti I's death, his successor Ramses II altered parts of the temple, carving his own inscriptions over existing ones. Over centuries, The erosion and layering of these overlapping carvings produced images that our modern minds interpret as familiar machines. Photographs taken in the 1930s first brought attention to these shapes, and they have since become a popular example cited by those suggesting ancient Egyptians had contact with advanced technology, or even extraterrestrials. The buzz over the so-called helicopter carvings hasn't stopped Egyptologists from urging caution before accepting bold claims. They emphasize the importance of understanding the historical and cultural context of Abydos, where reusing and modifying inscriptions was a common practice. The images are better explained as accidental overlaps rather than evidence of futuristic knowledge. Still, the visual impact of the carvings captures the imagination, blending mystery with the undeniable skill of ancient Egyptian artisans. The combination of artistry and the play of light and shadow creates a haunting atmosphere, inviting speculation about what messages or knowledge might be hidden in the stones. The temple, built over 3,000 years ago, remains a testament to a civilization deeply connected to symbolism and spirituality, where the line between myth and reality was often blurred. The broader mystery surrounding Abydos also includes the city's role as a major cult center for Osiris, the god of death and resurrection. The temple itself is part of a complex where pilgrims came to seek protection and blessings, hoping to gain favor in the afterlife. The presence of the puzzling carvings adds another layer of enigma to a place already steeped in legend and spiritual significance. This fusion of faith and mystery continues to draw archaeologists and tourists alike, eager to experience the ancient world's unanswered questions firsthand. Careful scientific study and detailed examination show that the reality is less sensational, yet still fascinating. The layers of inscriptions were carved at different times and then weathered in ways that produced the surprising shapes. This process highlights the complexity of preserving and interpreting ancient sites, reminding us that history is not always straightforward. The helicopter carvings serve as a unique example of how human perception and imagination can transform ancient art into modern mysteries. Throughout history, people have been drawn to puzzles and unexplained phenomena, sometimes interpreting them through the lens of current knowledge and technology. Abydos, with its ancient walls and enigmatic images, becomes a stage where past and present meet, inviting ongoing exploration and interpretation. As technology advances, new methods such as 3D scanning and digital imaging are being used to study sites like Abydos in greater detail, providing fresh perspectives and deeper understanding. While the helicopter carvings may not reveal secret ancient machines, they remind us of the rich, layered stories embedded in stone and the continuing mystery that surrounds human history. The ancient artisans who created these walls left behind not only their craftsmanship, but also an invitation to wonder, question, and explore the boundaries between fact and legend. The crocodile mummies of Kom Ombo. Beneath the hot sun of southern Egypt, the temple of Kom Ombo rises above the Nile's edge, its stones carved with scenes of gods and offerings. But it is what lies inside that has puzzled visitors for centuries. This ancient site, built during the Ptolemaic period, is unique because it was dedicated to two deities at once: Horus, the falcon-headed god, and Sobek, the crocodile god of the Nile. To honor Sobek, priests kept living crocodiles within temple grounds, feeding them, protecting them, and treating them not as dangerous predators, but as sacred animals believed to hold divine power. When these creatures died, their bodies were carefully preserved in the same way that human bodies were, their remains wrapped in linen, buried with offerings, and entombed in chambers hidden within the temple complex. The scale of this practice becomes clear when you step into the Crocodile Museum next to the temple, where dozens of mummified crocodiles are displayed. Archaeologists have found hundreds of such mummies in the area, many discovered in nearby sandbanks and rock-cut crypts, suggesting this was not an occasional ritual, but a deeply rooted tradition. The methods used to mummify these animals reveal a surprising level of skill. Priests likely removed the internal organs to slow decay, dried the bodies with natron salts, and applied resins to seal the skin. This process was nearly identical to the mummification of humans, showing that the Egyptians did not see a clear divide between honoring people and honoring the animals tied to their gods. It is also possible that some of these crocodiles were bred specifically for the temple, raised in sacred pools, and fattened on fish before their deaths, which might explain why so many of the mummies are of similar size and health. Scenes show priests making offerings to Sobek, and in some cases, crocodiles wearing crowns or lying peacefully beside humans. These images suggest a relationship between people and the animals that went beyond fear or necessity, hinting at a belief that crocodiles were protectors as much as they were dangerous. To worship Sobek was, in a sense, to make peace with the river's unpredictable nature. One of the most puzzling discoveries came from sealed chambers that held not just adult crocodiles, but entire nests of eggs, some of which had been mummified as well. This level of attention to unborn crocodiles has led researchers to wonder if they were seen as especially pure or powerful. Such finds deepen the question of whether the ancient Egyptians were attempting to symbolically protect the cycle of life, or to bind the spirit of the crocodile more completely to their god. Despite the wealth of remains, much about these mummies remains unexplained. Were all the crocodiles considered incarnations of Sobek, or were some simply offerings to gain his favor? Did the people of Kom-Ombo believe these mummified reptiles continued to influence the living world, or were they meant solely for the afterlife? And why did this practice seem so concentrated in this one location, when Sobek was worshipped in other parts of Egypt as well? The absence of written explanations leaves only the silent testimony of the mummies themselves, each one a preserved body that still hides its story. Standing in the temple today, the dry air filled with the faint smell of sandstone, it is easy to imagine the rituals that once took place here. Priests might have led processions carrying crocodile mummies through the courts, their linen wrappings catching the sun, while chants and incense rose toward the painted ceilings. And in dark, torchlit rooms, the bodies of crocodiles would be prepared for burial, transformed from flesh and bone into eternal symbols of divine power. Even with modern research, the crocodile mummies of Kom-Ombo remain as much a riddle as a relic. They tell of a faith that saw the divine in forms both feared and revered, and of a people willing to dedicate immense effort to preserving creatures that once lurked in the muddy waters of the Nile. Whether these mummies were guardians, messengers, or simply sacred gifts, they still hold the same silent, watchful presence they did thousands of years ago, leaving us to wonder just what the ancient priests believed they were protecting or summoning when they wrapped the body of a crocodile in linen and sealed it away in stone. The elongated skulls of Amarna. The city of Amarna was unlike any other in ancient Egypt, a place built from nothing under the orders of Pharaoh Akhenaten, who abandoned the old gods and dedicated his new capital to the Aten, the sun disk. Life here seemed to follow its own rules, reflected in the art that showed people with slender limbs, narrow faces, and strangely elongated heads. The depictions of Akhenaten's family, his queen Nefertiti, and their daughters stand out as some of the most unusual in all of Egyptian history. Their skulls stretched high and smooth in a way that artists elsewhere in the country never portrayed. What makes this even stranger is that archaeologists have unearthed skeletons in Amarna whose skulls are genuinely elongated, suggesting this was not just artistic style, but something physical and deliberate. As the city's ruins were uncovered in the early 20th century, evidence emerged of both wealthy and humble inhabitants, including individuals whose skulls had been deliberately reshaped since infancy. This practice of head shaping, known in other parts of the ancient world, involved tightly binding the skull of a baby during its early growth to gradually change its form. In Amarna, it appears this was done intentionally, and possibly for symbolic reasons tied to the royal family's image. The exact purpose remains debated, with some scholars suggesting it marked a person as belonging to a special class or group within the city. People here lived under a new religion that rejected the old pantheon, and in doing so, they may have embraced new ways of marking identity and status, including altering their bodies. The elongated skulls could have been a visual connection to the divine, making the person appear more like the royal family, who were shown as unique in form and features. For those who lived in Amarna, looking like the pharaoh may have been a sign of loyalty or a way to be spiritually closer to the Aten's chosen ruler. According to some researchers, the unusual skull shapes of the royal family in art may have been purely symbolic, not the result of actual physical modification. Others believe there could have been a medical condition within the royal bloodline that caused natural elongation, and that the practice among the people was an imitation of what they saw in their rulers. The truth is hidden by the destruction of the city after Akhenaten's death, when the old gods returned, and his name and image were chiseled out of history. Those who followed him were buried quickly or reinterred elsewhere, and much of the physical evidence is fragmentary at best. Even in the tombs that survive, the presence of elongated skulls is rare enough to suggest this was not a common feature among all Amarna's residents. Those who bore the shape may have lived within a closed circle of palace servants, religious attendants, or members of the court. To bind a child's head from birth was a long commitment, one that required patience and care, which means the choice to do it was deliberate and meaningful. It was not a simple fashion trend, but a statement of identity, one that the child would carry for life and take into death. The effect on daily life for those with elongated skulls is difficult to know, though studies of similar practices elsewhere suggest it had little impact on brain function. The meaning, therefore, was entirely visual and social, something people noticed and responded to immediately. In the open streets of Amarna, where sunlight fell harshly on pale sandstone walls, these distinctive heads would have stood out in the crowds, marking the individual as different before a single word was spoken. This difference could have meant privilege or restriction, respect or suspicion, depending on the time and place. When the city fell into ruin after Akhenaten's death, the people with these elongated skulls likely became targets of hostility as the old religious order returned. To resemble the hated pharaoh was dangerous, and it's possible that some of these individuals fled, were forced to hide their identities, or met violent ends. Today, these skulls sit in museum collections, silent but still carrying the imprint of a choice made thousands of years ago, when a ruler's vision reshaped not just a city and its religion, but even the very bodies of its people. The mysterious death of Tutankhamun. In the heart of the Valley of the Kings, where the cliffs seem to hold centuries of secrets in their shadows, the tomb of Tutankhamun lay hidden until Howard Carter uncovered it in November 1922. Yet beyond the glittering mask and jeweled artifacts, the body at the center of it all carried clues that sparked one of the most enduring mysteries in archaeology. Tutankhamun, who ascended the throne as a child and ruled for less than a decade, had died under circumstances that remain uncertain, with theories ranging from accident to assassination. Not long after the discovery, the first examinations of the mummy revealed an unusual set of conditions that set it apart from other royal burials. His body appeared badly charred, with signs of having been burned after burial, but before full decomposition. Some early researchers suggested it was due to a botched mummification, while others hinted at a deliberate act meant to hide evidence. When Carter's team documented the remains, they found that Tutankhamun's sternum and parts of his rib cage were missing entirely, something not seen in other royal mummies from the same era. Cutting-edge techniques soon revealed details that changed the course of the debate. CT scans in 2005 revealed a severe fracture to his left thigh bone, likely sustained shortly before death, which some interpreted as a possible chariot accident. The fracture appeared so significant that infection could have set in, especially in an age without antibiotics. However, later chemical analysis of the body's blackened flesh indicated that a rapid, intense chemical reaction, possibly caused by the combination of oils used in embalming and exposure to oxygen, may have actually ignited the body inside the coffin. If true, it suggested that the embalming process had been rushed or performed incorrectly, which would be unusual for a king. Other lines of investigation pointed toward illness rather than injury. DNA testing conducted in 2010 identified traces of the malaria parasite, making Tutankhamun one of the earliest known cases in history. Coupled with evidence of congenital bone disorders, likely the result of generations of royal intermarriage, this opened the possibility that he was already in poor health long before any fatal event. Still, whispers of foul play have never disappeared from the conversation. Some historians revisit the political climate of the time, noting that Tutankhamun's death left the throne vulnerable. His widow, Ankhesenamun, is believed to have written a desperate letter to the Hittite king, asking for one of his sons to marry Hera, a move that would have been unthinkable unless she feared for her own safety. Figures like a high-ranking courtier who became pharaoh after Tutankhamun's death, and Horemheb, a military general, are often mentioned as possible beneficiaries of his untimely demise. No direct evidence ties them to his death, but the power shifts that followed are hard to ignore. Artifacts within the tomb add their own quiet hints. The rushed nature of the burial, along with the small size of the tomb compared to other pharaohs, led some to think his death was sudden and unexpected, leaving little time for elaborate preparations. If his embalming was indeed flawed, it might have been a symptom of that haste, whether caused by natural illness, accident, or something more sinister. The mummy itself continues to be a contested source of truth, while CT scans, DNA tests, and chemical analysis offer pieces of the puzzle. Each finding seems to raise as many questions as it answers. Was the leg fracture a cause or a result of death? Did malaria weaken him enough for even a minor injury to be fatal? Was the charring of his remains purely accidental, or was it the product of an ancient attempt to destroy his body? The conflicting evidence has created a mystery where every theory has its own set of contradictions. Even after a century of study, the boy king's fate remains an unfinished story. The treasures of his tomb may dazzle the eye, but the real intrigue lies in the quiet traces of injury, disease, and perhaps betrayal that linger in his bones. Each new study draws us closer to understanding, yet never fully resolves the question, as if the sands of Egypt are determined to keep some secrets for themselves. In the stillness of his burial chamber, beneath the painted ceiling of stars, Tutankhamun continues to guard the final truth of his short and enigmatic life. The sunken temples of Heracleion, beneath the churning waters of the Mediterranean, where shifting currents hide traces of a lost world, the ruins of Heracleion lay buried in silence for over 1,000 years. This ancient Egyptian port city, once bustling with traders, priests, and travelers from across the known world, slowly disappeared beneath the waves until it was nothing more than a legend whispered by historians and sailors. For centuries, the name Heracleion existed only in old texts, its location unknown, and its existence doubted by many until the year 2000, when marine archaeologist Frank Goddio and his team uncovered its sunken remains off the coast of Alexandria. What they found was not just a city swallowed by the sea, but a place that seemed frozen in the moment of its final hours, as if the water had rushed in and sealed away its secrets. Its temples stood as monuments to the gods, most notably the Grand Temple of Amun, which drew pilgrims from far and wide. Divers exploring the site discovered colossal statues lying in the sand, each weighing several tons, their carved features still visible through a thin veil of silt. Among the most remarkable finds were the massive stone blocks of the temple foundations, still arranged in the layout they once held, showing how the city's sacred heart was meticulously planned. In the murky depths, divers also uncovered mysterious stone tablets inscribed in both Greek and Egyptian, revealing the city's role in the merging of cultures during the late period of Egyptian history. These inscriptions recorded laws, taxes, and temple decrees, offering a rare window into daily life in a place where two great civilizations met. Yet, the more the divers uncovered, the more questions arose about how such a thriving city could vanish entirely. Geological studies of the seabed suggest that the ground beneath Heracleion was weakened by the slow saturation of water, making it vulnerable to sudden collapse. One theory points to a massive earthquake or a series of tremors, possibly combined with a flood, that caused the land to sink rapidly into the sea. While these explanations seem plausible, the layout of the ruins hints at something more unsettling. Some of the artifacts recovered from the seabed were clearly placed as offerings, arranged in neat patterns as though part of a hurried ritual. Large jars filled with grain and oil were found sealed, suggesting they had been prepared for use but never opened. Even more puzzling were the remains of boats discovered still loaded with cargo, preserved beneath layers of sediment. Such finds suggest that whatever happened to Heracleion came with little warning, catching its people unprepared, yet still prompting acts of devotion to the gods in their final moments. The rediscovery of Heracleion also revealed treasures tied to ancient religious practices, including the festival of Osiris, which was believed to have been celebrated here with grand processions on the water. Inscriptions and recovered statues point to a deep connection between the city and this myth of death and rebirth, leading some to wonder whether the very rituals meant to honor the gods had any connection to the disaster that befell the city. Ancient records speak of omens in the years before its disappearance, unusual tides, storms, and tremors that may have been interpreted as divine warnings. Whether coincidence or something more, these details have added to the aura of mystery surrounding Heracleion's final days. Even in its sunken state, Heracleion offers a vivid sense of the life that once thrived there. Divers speak of swimming past colossal stone faces, staring blankly into the dark, their expressions unchanged after centuries underwater. The streets, now pathways of sand and coral, still hold the outlines of markets, homes, and docks where sailors once moored their ships. Each expedition brings new finds, but also deepens the unanswered question. Show much of the city is still buried beneath the seabed, and what final events turned a thriving port into a silent grave beneath the waves. The waters over Heracleion remain restless, sometimes clouded with stirred silt, as if reluctant to give up the full truth of what lies below. And while modern archaeology has brought much of its story back into the light, the city still keeps the most crucial details locked away, hidden under layers of mud, stone, and time. Those who have seen it say that Heracleion feels less like a ruin and more like a place simply waiting for the moment it will rise again, though whether that moment will come from the efforts of divers or the will of the sea is a mystery only the deep can answer. The Forgotten Pharaoh Neferneferuaten. The story of Neferneferuaten begins in the final years of the Amarna period, a time already tangled in religious upheaval and political uncertainty, when the traditional gods of Egypt had been cast aside in favor of the Aten, and the old power structures struggled to hold their ground. Historians have long debated whether Neferneferuaten was Nefertiti herself, ruling under a new name, or another member of the royal family such as her daughter Meritaten, stepping into the role to preserve her family's fragile control. Inscriptions, fragments of statues, and hastily altered cartouches suggest a reign caught between the shadow of Akhenaten's vision and the looming return of the old order, making this pharaoh one of the most enigmatic rulers in Egyptian history. On temple walls and in buried reliefs, the name Neferneferuaten appears alongside phrases that hint at a connection to Akhenaten, yet just as often they are paired with symbols of legitimacy meant to reassure a nervous populace. Some inscriptions refer to Ankh-Khepera Neferneferuaten in ways that seem deliberately vague, allowing room for multiple identities to coexist in the historical record. This ambiguity is heightened by evidence of erased names and altered titles, as though those in power after the Amarna period sought to obscure or reshape the legacy of whoever held the throne. The political instability of the time meant that every symbol, every royal cartouche, carried heavy meaning and could be used as a tool for survival or erasure. Clues about Neferneferuaten's reign come not only from the inscriptions, but also from the physical remnants of buildings and statues that were begun but never completed. Archaeologists have uncovered blocks bearing her name in Karnak, Thebes, and Amarna, many of them repurposed by later rulers for their own monuments. These half-finished projects suggest a ruler whose power was contested or whose reign was cut short before her vision could take root. Some scholars point to the delicate, almost cautious style of certain Amarna-era works as evidence that Neferneferuaten tried to balance her predecessor's radical changes with a gradual return to tradition. Burial evidence adds yet another layer to the mystery, particularly in the tombs of the Valley of the Kings. A handful of artifacts inscribed with Neferneferuaten's name were found in Tutankhamun's burial chamber, leading to theories that his famous golden mask was originally made for her. The mask's facial features, more feminine than masculine, and the alterations made to its inscriptions fuel the idea that she may have been the intended occupant of KV-62 before her place in history was rewritten. If true, it would mean her burial was disrupted, her memory deliberately reduced to scattered fragments hidden in another ruler's tomb. In the years after Akhenaten's death, Egypt was in a precarious state, threatened by both internal dissent and foreign powers sensing weakness. Some believe Neferneferuaten was a compromised ruler accepted by those loyal to Atenism but tolerated by the priesthood of Amun in the hopes of avoiding civil war. Diplomatic records from the time mention a mysterious Egyptian queen who sent desperate letters to the Hittite king Suppiluliuma I, pleading for one of his sons to marry her because she had no heir. Many Egyptologists think this could have been Neferneferuaten, and that her plea set off a chain of events that ended in bloodshed when the Hittite prince was killed before reaching Egypt. As with much of Amarna history, the truth about Neferneferuaten has been layered with centuries of political rewriting and archaeological gaps. The deliberate defacing of her name on monuments suggests that later rulers considered her reign a threat to the narrative they wanted preserved. In many cases, only the faint outlines of her titles remain, carved over or chiseled away so thoroughly that her existence was nearly erased. Yet each fragment that survives offers a fleeting glimpse into the life of a ruler navigating one of the most turbulent moments in Egyptian history. If nothing else, Neferneferuaten, is remembered through the questions that remain unanswered, keeping scholars and archaeologists divided. Was she Nefertiti reinvented as pharaoh, a daughter carrying her father's torch, or an entirely different figure who briefly held the throne? Her story has become a mirror of the Amarna period itself, bright with ambition, shadowed by uncertainty, and destined to leave more mysteries than solutions. The sands of Egypt have hidden much, but every chipped stone and faded carving whispers that this forgotten ruler once stood at the heart of a kingdom struggling to decide its own future. The tomb that burned itself shut. When workers first entered the tomb, deep in the Valley of the Kings, they expected the air inside to be heavy with dust and stillness, but what they found instead was an interior sealed by a thick black crust that clung to the walls and ceiling as if the rock itself had melted and hardened over centuries. The carvings that once told stories of the afterlife were warped, their outlines blurred by an intense heat that seemed out of place in a chamber carved into cool limestone. Traces of paint still clung stubbornly to certain patches, but they were blistered and flaked, as though a sudden, scorching fire had passed over them in a single night, leaving the room frozen in the moment of its destruction. Far from being the work of robbers or vandals, the damage bore the signature of something that had happened while the tomb was still sealed and untouched by human hands. Scientific analysis later revealed that the pigments used in the wall paintings contained oils and resins that could ignite under certain conditions, and the combination of those materials with the decomposing organic offerings within the chamber may have created a chemical reaction that produced enough heat to set the art itself aflame. Instead of an open blaze, it was more likely a smoldering fire that consumed the oxygen quickly, baking the walls in a way that preserved their outlines but destroyed their fine details. Even the sarcophagus showed signs of having been subjected to extreme heat, its surface cracked and darkened in patterns that mirrored the burn marks on the walls. Archaeologists piecing together the sequence of events found themselves asking how such an incident could occur naturally inside a sealed tomb. The answer, while grounded in chemistry, felt more like a scene from a cursed legend. The oils used to bring out the brilliance of the paintings were often applied over layers of plant gum, animal glue, and minerals, and as the burial goods decayed over time, gases may have built up until they reached a concentration that could ignite. The reaction might have started slowly, deep within the layers of the pigment, creating heat that spread through the chamber without an obvious flame. By the time the process burned itself out, the damage was complete, and the tomb's interior was left as a darkened, warped version of its original splendor. One of the most unsettling aspects of this discovery was the thought of how perfectly preserved the scene of destruction had remained. For over 3,000 years, the burnt surfaces lay in complete darkness, hidden from the world until the day the tomb was opened. The blackened walls stood as a frozen record of the fire's final moments, untouched by wind or water, a silent reminder of how quickly beauty can be undone. There was no sign that the builders of the tomb had any awareness of the danger, no adjustments in materials or construction that suggested such an event had happened before. It seemed to have been a one-time occurrence, as rare as it was devastating. The ancient Egyptians who prepared this burial had done everything to ensure permanence. The chambers were carefully sealed, the walls painstakingly painted, and the offerings chosen to last for eternity. Yet, inside this hidden world, a chain of invisible reactions began to undo all that work. The fire had not only altered the paintings, but had also warped the symbolic power they once held. Scenes meant to guide the soul through the afterlife were now cracked and blackened, their meaning obscured beneath the scars of heat. It was as though the tomb itself had turned inward, erasing its own purpose. Even now, the exact sequence of chemical events remains difficult to reproduce in controlled experiments, which only deepens the mystery. The ingredients, conditions, and timing would have had to align with extreme precision, making it an accident that could not be easily repeated. To those who study it, the tomb that burned itself shut is a lesson in how even the most secure places can fall victim to forces no one planned for. For those who visit it, the darkened surfaces give the uneasy impression that something inside tried to resist being uncovered, sealing its secrets in fire before time could claim them. The Serapeum's giant stone boxes. Beneath the wind-swept desert sands of Saqqara lies a labyrinth that seems almost deliberately hidden from the outside world, its long corridors stretching into shadow before ending abruptly at massive stone chambers that dwarf anyone who dares to enter. Within these dimly lit halls rest the colossal granite boxes of the Serapeum monolithic containers, so immense and so precisely crafted that even modern engineers pause to wonder how the ancient Egyptians carved, transported, and positioned them with such uncanny accuracy. Each box, carved from a single piece of granite or diorite, weighs an estimated 70 tons for the lid alone, while the base can tip the scales at more than twice that amount, and yet the surfaces are so smooth they reflect light like polished glass. The question of their purpose is bound up with the mystery of the Apis bulls, sacred animals believed to be earthly manifestations of the god Ptah. But even if they were intended as tombs for these revered beasts, the level of effort and craftsmanship seems to speak of something far more significant. Guided by centuries-old accounts, archaeologist Auguste Mariette arrived at the site in 1850 and discovered that many of its corridors were walled off with rubble, as if someone had tried to seal them forever. When he finally breached these barriers, he came face to face with the enormous sarcophagi, some still sealed, others pried open long ago, their contents removed or perhaps never placed there at all. This absence has fueled debate among scholars, because while inscriptions on some boxes and walls link the site to the burial of the Apis bulls, many of the containers bear no decoration or writing, leaving their function open to speculation. Such an omission is unusual in Egyptian tomb culture, where even the smallest chamber was typically adorned with spells and blessings for the afterlife. It is in the details of construction where the Serapeum becomes even more perplexing, for the precision with which the boxes were cut seems to defy the limitations of the tools known to exist at the time. The corners form perfect right angles, the interiors are smooth to the touch, and the dimensions are so exact that even a sheet of paper could scarcely slip between the lid and the base when closed. In the subdued torchlight of the underground chambers, the scale of these boxes becomes even more intimidating as the human mind struggles to grasp the sheer effort required to haul them from distant Khorassan, likely as far away as Aswanand, maneuver them through the narrow tunnels that lead into the Serapeum. Theories about why such effort was invested range from the practical to the extraordinary. Some Egyptologists maintain that the boxes served a purely ritual purpose, forming a sacred resting place for the embalmed remains of the Apis bulls, which were central to religious ceremonies spanning centuries. Others, more skeptical of the official explanations, point to the lack of organic remains in most boxes and suggest they may have served as symbolic or ceremonial receptacles, their contents perhaps never meant to be physical at all. A handful of alternative researchers have gone further, proposing that the boxes were designed to store something entirely unrelated to burial practices, perhaps functioning as containment vessels for unknown substances, or even as components in ancient energy-related rituals, though such ideas remain far outside mainstream archaeology. Whatever the intended function, There is an undeniable aura to the Serapeum that makes it feel like a place removed from the ordinary world, a space shaped by intentions we can no longer fully comprehend. Standing beside one of the stone boxes, a person might run their hand along the cool, perfect surface and imagine the sounds of chisels striking rock thousands of years ago, the rhythmic thud echoing through the dark as workers labored by the dim flicker of oil lamps. Above, the shifting sands hide the entrance from casual eyes, allowing the Serapeum to remain as it has, for a gaze, a place of deep, lingering mystery. Time, research, and speculation have done little to unravel the mystery. These towering stone boxes still guard their secrets deep underground. They stand as silent witnesses to a chapter of Egyptian history that is written not in words, but in the weight and polish of stone, their purpose locked away as securely as any treasure that may once have rested within. Perhaps they will always be enigmas, reminders that not every riddle of the ancient world should be solved.